An Empire of Ice and Fire by Longclaw 1-6. Chapter 35. Hand in the North. Hit with a blast of cold air as the bannermen drew open the door for him, Jon welcomed the jolting gust as he stepped out onto the walkway, overlooking the inner courtyard. It helped clear his mind, especially after the stressful day he had. Even our unification did not end the squabbles. That did not really surprise Jon, but what it did was that his newfound title as King in the North didn't help quell such mundane bickering as he hoped it would. I do not follow why you gave the Umbers and the Carstocks their land back. Sensing the graceful yet determined steps of his queen fall in beside him, Jon was grateful of one thing. The opposition of the North towards Daenerys had all but disappeared. Once the news of Jon's parentage seeped into their conscious thoughts, the Northern anger had shifted from Rhaegar Targaryen to Robert Baratheon. He had to have known, argued Olenna Tyrell, many agreeing with her. They rose up with my brother and that sadistic freak Lord Bolton against you. Why reward them? There has been enough punishment, enough infighting among us, Jon replied back. I'm not going to descend us into a massive cycle of revenge and counter-revenge. Behind him walked Missandei, Tyrion and Sansa, with Robb marching south with the main North Vale unsullied army, Davos and Grey Worm in tow. Waiting at the Twins was a decent-sized Riverlands army under Edmure Tully, necessitating Catelyn's presence as well. The three were the King in the North and the Dragon Queen's remaining small council. The Giscari had a saying, an eye for an eye makes the world blind. Missandei's quote may have been foreign, but Jon found it applicable to the situation. While putting 10-year-old Ned Umber and 16-year-old Alice Karstark to death for what their father and elder brother would be, shall we say, a bit over the top, Tyrion brushed snow off his coat and his shaggy hair. Criticised as he was apt to do, the dwarf was in a good mood. Since Shae was in the North, it wasn't surprising. Why would you give those families back their lands? There are plenty of fine northern knights who could have an established family line. Gritting his teeth, Jon resisted the urge to wake the dragon, but it was greatly irritating. Out of all the measures to put forth at the Congress of Lords, from sending Podrick Payne and a detachment of North Vale Knight light cavalry to Marine to train both men and women, small folk to fight the army of the dead, the granting of the Umber and Karstark lands back to their rightful heirs had been the most controversial. Dany, Tyrion and Sansa opposed it, Sansa openly. I get your opinions, but my decision is final. He turned to Sansa, openly irritated. And I did not appreciate you undermining me back there. A look of incredulity formed on Sansa's face. Undermined you? At least Daenerys and Tyrion whispered their concerns to me. By speaking openly, you defied my authority. Joffrey didn't allow dissent, and neither did Viserys. Stepping back, Jon looked at Sansa with pain in his eyes. Do you think me one of them? Placing her hand on his shoulder, Sansa smiled at her brother. No, Jon. You are nothing like Joffrey or Viserys. You wouldn't be here today if you were anything like them. But Jon snorted. Father used to say anything after the word but is horseshit. Tyrion guffawed at that, while the women couldn't help but smirk. Sansa smacked Jon on the shoulder lightly. Don't interrupt me, my king. Her eyes twinkled with mirth. As I was saying, we cannot afford major mistakes. A ruler needs to be open to counsel. She's right. Daenerys had been faced with such tyrannical impulses before, most notably the dispute over crucifying the great masters of Meereen, for which she wanted to select 300 randomly, but was convinced to simply kill those responsible for the child murders. Power easily corrupts. There needs to be a check, Jon, no matter how good and honourable you are. Jon opened his mouth to speak, but the words died on Jon's lips. You're right, both of you. I don't regret my actions there, but I haven't consulted with my advisors since I arrived in Winterfell, and it was a mistake. He turned to his sister. That's why I'm appointing you as my hand in the North. Sansa blinked, initially disbelieving her brother's words. What? Unable to stop his chuckle, it was Jon's turn to put a hand on her shoulder. The war against Joffrey will take Daenerys and I south. While we are gone, I trust no one more than you to prepare for the war against the dead. Do you accept Sansa of House Stark? Trembling with the weight of it all, Sansa's first inclination was to decline. She had treated Jon like shit her whole life, but her brother not only forgave her, but made her his hand? The only honourable thing to do was to reward his trust. She kneeled. I will honour your trust in me, my king. Rise, Sansa of House Stark. Hand of the king. Formalities over, the siblings hugged tightly. Merry laughs rang out from Tyrion's throat. Welcome to the very illustrious guild, Lady Sansa. There are many things I do wish to discuss with you. The imp led Sansa away. Soon it was just him and Dany. Smiling now that the betrothal had been announced, he had no one stopping him from reaching out and pulling her into an embrace. Monarchs don't show affection in public, said an inner voice sounding remarkably like Tyrion. Jon didn't care. I love you, he whispered into her ear. Dany smiled against his neck, sighing happily at his warmth. I love you too. She pulled back, looking him in the eyes. I am sorry for doubting you, Jon. I just didn't want you to reward betrayal. Small Jon Umber and Harold Stark betrayed my family, and they are both dead. I would be everything that dishonoured our family had I taken it out on their innocent heirs. Knowing he was right, Dany's heart hitched at him referring to our family. Wordlessly, she kissed him. Will you make Sansa your full hand? Soon Jon was to be emperor as well as king in the north, and would need an advisor and counsel for that role as well. Like Tyrion will be for you. He asked her. He chuckled at Dany's nod. Someone will need to stay here and make sure the fight against the dead isn't neglected. I trust Sansa above all others for that. As for the south, I think Sir Davos is the right man for the job. A good choice. A bit unorthodox, the Iron Knight had done a fantastic job in rehabilitating the twins and Moat Cailin for operations against the Lannisters. Robb's dispatches said as much. Dany's gaze then flickered to the courtyard, warmth sweeping over her heart as she relaxed into Jon's side. Blinking, Jon quickly found where his betrothed was looking. He couldn't help but smile as well. There were his two children, practicing water dancing with their Aunt Arya. With Robb at the twins with the army, his sister happily agreed to take over their lessons. He felt Dany tense when Arya wheeled around and rapped Rhaegar on the shoulder. Don't worry, my dragon. Arya won't hurt them. Aren't they too young? She asked, peering up at him. Jon shook his head. It's just the basics. Robb and I started at that age. Relieved at her tension dissipating, the two simply gazed happily at the scene down below them. Face set in a scowl, 6-year-old Rhaegar lashed out with his training sword, only for Arya to jink out of the way at the last minute. Relax, little dragon, she cautioned. Never allow your frustrations to get the better of you. Regurgitating Syrio Farrell's dancing lessons made a small pang of sadness throb inside her, but it subsided. There was no better honour to his memory than passing his lessons to her niece and nephew. Now, attack! Pressing a thrust, which Arya easily parried, she shouted, Left! But then proceeded to slash right and smack Rhaegar lightly on the shoulder with a training sword. The Crown Prince stared at her, jaw agape. You said left! Yes, but I went right, she grinned. Is this how I looked when he did that to me? Syrio had to have found it amusing if she had. You lied, Aunt Arya! Your enemies won't hesitate to manipulate and deceive you. So you have to be ready, little dragon. Seeing his face fall, Arya sighed. Her nephew was 6. These lessons were more designed to give him discipline and basic positions than actual skill. Part of her wanted to be strict, but he was family. Come here, little dragon. She hugged him. If it makes you feel any better, it took me years to learn properly. Wide, violet eyes looked up at her. Really? Arya smirked. I didn't get to be this amazing in a day. The Wild Wolf was sure that her siblings would have rolled their eyes at her cocky statement. Just keep working on it. Just as Rhaegar attempted to get back out into position, he was shoved aside by his sister. Out of the way! It's my turn, brother! Young Arya was dressed in a padded woolen shirt and thick trousers, functional and quintessentially northern. Despite the unabashed Targaryen silver hair and delicate features, she looked every inch her grandmother, the she-wolf. I am ready to water dance, Aunt Arya. Smirking at her namesake, Arya assumed her stance. I see you, brat. Out flew a rock, only barely missing the frightened boy. The grocer hefted the other one in his hand, ready to toss it at the would-be scavenger. Get out of here before I grab my axe. Tall and fit, despite the 3 fingers missing from one hand, courtesy of a Lannister sword during the War of the Four Kings, there was little doubt he could catch up to and brain the wispy, gaunt little boy if he had wanted to. Hunched over, Eddard Blackledge ducked around the corner of the Wintertown wheelwright, stomach knotted into an empty ball. His tattered furs hung loose on his skeletal frame as he leaned against the wooden wall. Only 7 years since his original name day, life at home with his mama and older sissy had been tough. Eddard's father, now only stories and faint memories of a big bear of a man that could slice a log clean through with an axe, had marched south with Robb Stark and met his fate at the Red Wedding. Food only became sparingly since then, whatever scraps Lord Bolton threw their way, or whatever little Eddard could scrounge up around Wintertown. The grocer's refuse pile usually had decent pickings, but since he got caught, Eddard knew he'd be going home hungry tonight. Stabbing, gnawing pain torn at his stomach. Starvation was gripping the north as winter came, especially after Lord Bolton took over. Not a caring man, nothing like Eddard's namesake, Lord Snow brought the promise of a change, but with armies moving in and out of the castle, the struggling residents of the growing town grew weary. Stumbling into the street, mind on nothing but the hunger pangs, little Eddard smacked into a burly figure. Glancing up, his eyes widened at one of the savage horsemen from far away. Guttural shouts left him, waving a meaty arm to shove Eddard away, the boy too weak and feeble to resist. A softer voice responded, causing the horseman to step away. At that moment, Eddard felt a gentle hand rest on his cheek and chin. Are you all right, young one? The boy then met the most dazzlingly beautiful eyes he had ever seen. Vibrant, violet, sparkling with compassion. There was no doubt at who this was. Yes, my queen, he squeaked out, words largely failing him. Behind the silver-haired queen was another striking angel of a woman, long brown hair framing a friendly, inviting face. Around them, a small crowd of onlookers were gathered around. Maester Walken, Marjorie asked, is enough food being supplied to the smallfolk? An older man sighed. We have been stockpiling food in process of preparing for war, my lady. Enough has been distributed for the normal population, but we have been getting many refugees from the gift. At the sight of this boy's visible ribs, flesh close to being wasted away, Dany felt her heart clench. All her people, as much as her slaves of Meereen or the soldiers of her army. Please, Maester, ensure that the food distributions match that of the current population. With the royal army marching south to the Riverlands, the granaries could afford it. Smiling at the boy, Dany told her blood rider to hand him a gold coin. How many are in your family? Eddard stared at the coin as if it were a gift from the old gods. 3, your grace. Well, get food for all of them, all right? Overwhelmed by a gratitude, a kindness not seen outside his family his entire life, Eddard lurched forward to hug the queen. Taken aback a bit, Dany relaxed and wrapped her arms around the trembling boy. Around her, for the first time, the citizens of the north saw not a Targaryen, something to be feared from the stories of their lord and heir travelling south to their deaths, but as their future queen. Hearing a knock on her door, Sansa Stark tightened the thick gown around her body, covering her shift. Padding over with a candle in her hand, from where she had been reviewing her compartments, she hesitated upon reaching the door. Who is it? Her free hand went to a concealed pocket where a knife rested. There was no chance another Ramsay would ever take her. It's Podrick Payne, my lady. Tension deflating, Sansa unlatched the door and opened it. There was the young knight, newly knighted by Jon as one of his first acts of King of the North, dressed in the full regalia of a Stark banner knight. Sir Podrick, she said, why are you dressed for battle? Shouldn't he have been asleep? Why was he here? Sansa was grateful for him saving her life. Twice, actually. And was generally trusting of him, but that couldn't explain it. Pardon, my lady. I didn't mean to intrude. But my command is about to ride to White Harbour for our journey to Essos. I intended to inform his grace, but he was... Podrick's face went red. He was consulting with Queen Daenerys. Eyes widening in understanding, Sansa fought a chuckle. Good for Jon. Thank you for informing me. I will let his grace know tomorrow. That isn't all, my lady. Blushing madly, Podrick's mouth opened and closed several times, trying to find what to say. The truth, Sansa found it somewhat endearing as well as funny. Would it beg your pardon if I had permission to write to you while I was on the journey? By Raven, I mean. Sansa blinked. Write me? He fidgeted with the hilt of his sword. Yes, I don't yet know who I trust within Meereen, without being there. I wish to make my own reports to you. And, with my family in Lannister-controlled lands, it would be welcome for someone else to converse with. If the lady doesn't find offence, of course. Standing there, Sansa knew not what to say. It would be good to get verifiable intelligence on the ground in Meereen. The hand of the king in her said to agree, but, oh, hell's with it, Podrick was as threatening as a hedgehog. You have my permission. Startled at her words, Podrick bowed. Good night, my lady. With that he turned to leave. Sansa's eyes were trained on him until he turned the corner, a ghost of a smile curling onto her face. Lady Reed! Water sloshed within the ceramic amphora as she lifted it away from the fountain. Mira looked up to find a rail-thin, bald youth running toward her. While normally the sight of a warlock drew her apprehension, she couldn't help but smile. Good morning, Ply. Coming to a stop right in front of her, Ply Corrie smiled weakly as he caught his breath. Barely Bran's age, with the blue-tinted lips of a warlock, the lack of any body decorations or any visible mutilation indicated him as a junior apprentice. Thus he lacked the enigmatic arrogance and muted malevolence that was so biased Mira against the fully trained members of the Warlock Guild. Do you know where Lord Stark is? The lad seemed to want to be as close to Bran as possible, almost as if he wanted the cripple highborn to be his mentor. Mira chuckled. He is studying in his room. She had no way if he was having his visions again, so went with the best answer she could think of. Why do you ask? The brothers want to train his skills of self-projection. I was asked to bring him over. No need. I'll wheel him. Loud, passionate voices from the hallway to her front caught Mira's attention. Before Ply could react, both of them were flattened tightly into the wall of the dark alcove. What's going... A hand found itself clasped over the apprentice warlock. Shh! Mira didn't know why she flattened herself and Ply against the wall. Simply on instinct if she was pressing hard enough. Her father had always said that a Crannog man had an innate sixth sense when danger was approaching. And the hushed voices coming from the shadows ahead were setting off her internal alarms in droves. Just something about them. Garth will never become the greatest city that ever was and ever will be by interfering in foreign affairs. The deep, projecting voice was unmistakable. Quaralzonzo Daxos, the king of Qarth. Why you could be proposing is quite risky. There is no risk, great king. The Dragon Queen has left Slaver's Bay, and a large component of her remaining garrison has gotten onto their ships as we speak. Peeking round the corner for a split second, Mira spotted a man with a beak of a nose and dark black curls. He wore flowing blue-white robes and a harpy pendant. A master. Young Kaya Astapor. She hadn't learned how to tell the difference. Her armies here can barely hold Meereen. A shrill voice that followed was none other than Pyat Pri. But what of the Westerosi men-at-arms that arrived? Defeated fools, dismissed the master. I wouldn't worry about them. We can take them on easily. But with Qarth on our side, we'd be unstoppable. King Joffrey has already ceded to us all the lands that once belonged to the Valyrian freehold, plus new markets for fresh produce. When one of the kind, wise, or great masters used the word produce, Mira had learnt they meant slave. The Dragon Queen was famous, or infamous, for trying to create better conditions in Essos. In contrast, it seemed as Joffrey was trying to tear down the conditions back home to match those here. For mere military aid and the deliverance of the Stark boy, Mira's eyes widened. Brandon Stark is under the protection of the Warlock Guild of Karth. Pyotry responded, He will not be touched. You heard him. Zaron's own Daxos was firm, voice steeled. I would not harm anyone within the protection of the greatest city that ever was or ever will be. Now about the military assistance. I'm afraid I still have major reservations about involving Karth in world affairs. The voices grew fainter, the king's party rounding the corner into the deeper parts of the garden. After about a minute passed with only sounds being the splashes of the fountain, Mira released her grip on Ply and gingerly stepped out of the alcove. The coast is clear. Her mind was still racing to process what she heard. Lady Reed? Ply was shaking almost. The kid was as sweet like her brother. Couldn't hurt a fly. May I go tell the brothers that junior brother Stark will join them at sunset? Peering at the garden path that the King of Karth had just trodden, Mira nodded hesitantly. Yes, go ahead. Hearing Ply scamper away, a deep breath left her lungs. Bran was safe at the moment, if the warlocks on Zaranzon Daxos were to be believed. But that could easily change in the time it took for her charge to complete his training. Why doesn't he just leave? Bran must learn. He is to be the one, the Raven. He must go south and then north. Jojen's words from long before still rang loudly. Though she was a realist, Bran had displayed so far to make her believe in magic. I must become sure we are ready to leave as soon as it becomes dangerous. Magic may have kept him in Karth, but good planning and smarts would get them out if need be. With a sharp thwing, the drawstring snapped forward, and the arrow flew forward towards its target. Good show, All Highest, commented a Mary Lorch, clapping. Joffrey, smirking underneath his large cabal, was sufficiently distracted enough for Meryn Trant to quickly stab an arrow into the bullseye. The arrow fired, clattering somewhere far to the right of the target. No one on this earth can compare to the great Chimera. Well, obviously not, Joffrey replied. I already deflowered Heart-Eater with the blood of Loras Tyrell. Soon it will be the Stark bastard whose blood my sword will taste. I have no idea that you haunt his nightmares at this very moment. Eyes lowered to the floor, Cersei wished she could spit in disgust. Joffrey was in a good mood these days, and thus the strict formality of court procedure had been loosened, at least among the inner circle. And the newest said member of the circle was Amory Lorch, one of her father's most trusted bannermen, just as sadistic as Joffrey, as given to how he stabbed Rhaenys over 100 times, but with decently cunning mind. He had already wrapped her easily manipulatable son around his finger, no one but her willing to get rid of him. I wish Jaime was here, she thought sadly. But he wasn't. Instead camped at Harrenhal, and from what she had learnt, it was Hill that gave Joffrey that idea. All Highest, she said, clearing her throat. Shall we discuss the matter at hand? Dropping the bow to the ground, Joffrey motioned to Dontos Hollard. Pick it up, fool! Kicking the former knight in the side, the king looked out at the assembled ministers and highborn. What pressing matters? Uncle Jaime will march on Winterfell and bring me the northern bastard and his dragon bitch. Several struggled to contain their grimaces. Our armies aren't fully prepared, All Highest, Qyburn answered. Perhaps it is best to wait for Lord Tywin to bring his forces from Dorne. Nonsense, babbled Grand Maester Pycelle. I did not take you for a defeatist. The charge was an incendiary one. Qyburn visibly bristling. Such accusations, depending on the king's mood, could end with one being executed. There is no doubt that his highest will be victorious in the end, Qyburn offered, but the victory will be quicker if we wait for Tywin's army to reinforce Sir Jaime's. Tell me, false maester, sneered Lorch, who possessed all of the arrogance of a great Westerlands lord, but none of the sense, Is Sir Jaime's army equipped with the dragon slayers you had commissioned? Qyburn blinked. Why, yes, Sir Amory. Then there doesn't seem to be a problem. Order a full attack, All Highest. They'll be dining in Winterfell by month's end. His flattering words visibly puffed Joffrey up under his veil. Moronic the military strategy was. From the sparkle in the knight's eyes, even he knew it. Don't be a fucking idiot, flatly stated Euron Greyjoy. Joffrey turned his shrouded face to glare at the Ironborn king. He had only recently been placed onto the small council, being the master of ships appointed by Tywin. Do you dare speak such words to me, after you so failed to obtain the dragon spawn? Euron, much as many detested the man, had an endearing quality of not being afraid of the king's temper. What is dead may never die. I didn't mean it like that. You misheard me. I meant that everyone advising you to go full attack now is a fucking idiot. My mistake. Littlefinger, quiet and observant as ever, slipped in to thrust his dagger. All Highest, may I suggest launching an attack on Riverrun? It was just recently occupied by the great-uncle to Sansa Stark. Capturing the uncle of the bastard's sister, your former betrothed, would send a great message to the north that you will defeat them in the end. Silence rang through the room as the king assessed his options. I like that, he exclaimed. Have them do that. All Highest, perhaps it would be wise to listen. Qyburn was cut off as a bony hand clasped around his neck. Joffrey's sunken eyes blazed. Send the raven out. As riveted as all in the room were to what was occurring, even Lorch kept his eyes on the floor with the others. Tell Uncle Jaime that he is to find Sansa's uncle, rip off his head and send it to her in a basket. Understood? Wheezing breaths left Qyburn, his slight frame enough to be threatened by the short king. Long may the Chimera reign! He collapsed to the ground with a smack as the king departed. End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed this. Fairly short one this time, thank goodness for my throat. Anyway, I'd like to say something about this cliffhanger here. Littlefinger, you fucking heck idiot. You claim to be in love with Catelyn, yet you tell her the man who ordered her husband executed armies to attack her childhood home. Really? Really? Though admittedly, I do like the bit with Arya and her training of the little wolves. That's very cute. And also Sansa becoming hand to the north for Jon. That's quite something. But I think he should have at least told her to keep her voice quiet during her dissension. You know, just a thought. I'm not one to criticise authors, though. Doing a way better job of this than I ever would have. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe. Hit the bell to get notified. Blah, blah, blah. And have a good day, night, or whatever time zone you're in. Bye, my guys, gals, and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!